my name is Allegra Gitonzi. I am part of the AFB committee, and we have organized this transition event for you guys in partnership with Mott MacDonald. So I'm just going to start an introduction, and Mott MacDonald will be able to take down. So as a start, can I just ask you guys to change your name to your actual name, your Zoom name to your actual name, so we can know who is who? That would be great, thank you. Okay, so that's the event we are all attending today. So this is the agenda of this morning. So I will start an AFB introduction, and MacDonald will be able to take that onto the transition experience, the info session, and an interview and application tips. So at AFBs, that's the Association of Black and Minority Engineers, we aim to empower people to get the skills they need to go into their engineering careers. And one of our programs is the transition event. So they are basically workshops to enable like students or people leaving university to get ready for the world of work. So we get them to speak to recruiters and interviewers so that they can see what they're doing wrong and what they're doing right, and get them to start applying for jobs and start working. So I will just hand on to Vanessa and Helena so that they can speak to you about the transition experience.
Hi everyone, I'm Vanessa Burton, and I will just share my screen. Can you all see the screen?
Yeah.
Yes.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So welcome today and looking forward to speaking to you all. Yeah. Oh. So I am Vanessa Burton and I am a civil engineer. I'm an assistant civil engineer at Mott MacDonald, where I've been working since university, so 2014. And I was also a placement student at Mott MacDonald, doing my internships and placements year since 2009, so a long time. So this talk today is just to let you know who I am, my starting book, school education, university, and my career just far. So just showing you the journey of how I got into engineering. Apologies for the photos of me. So I grew up in South London, born and raised, and I'm mixed race of dual heritage, white British and Black Caribbean. I'm a second generation British citizen, and I was actually, even though I'm in a STEM career, I was actually very much of an arts person growing up. So it was a very good shock to my family when I decided to take a career in STEM. So my school education, I went to a local primary school. I then went to a local comprehensive state school where I took around 11 GCSEs, and they were really varied. So I did both arts and sciences, not still trying to figure out what I wanted to do for a career. A lot in my school education, we did a lot of outreach and volunteering work. And I also volunteered for our local youth centres, working with children and ensuring that during summer holidays, kids had places to go while parents were working. I then left my secondary school at 16 and I went to a sixth form college. What's really interesting is that during my secondary school career, secondary school, again, I said I was much of an arts person, really enjoying arts, sports, and I enjoyed science, but it wasn't my favorite of subjects. It wasn't really until I did them at A levels, and for most of you who are graduates today, I really got interested in physics and chemistry and learning both the practicalities of STEM. And I think everybody loves a little, I don't know if they do them now, but where you did experiments and they blew up. They were always very fun. And then that kind of pushed me more into a STEM career. Looking at the different careers, I've always enjoyed architecture. Going on holiday, looking at buildings really gravitated to me. And that's where I really knew and wanted to go into civil engineering. So choosing university, so whilst choosing universities, I applied for the University of Surrey as they offered a scholarship program. So this was something you applied at your end of sixth form career, and if you were granted a place, you'd work both your summers and a placement year with your respective company. So I then joined university and I was granted a Surrey and ICE scholarship. I did in the geotechnical department at Mott MacDonald. So for those who don't know much about geotechnics, we do everything in the ground. And I was really lucky because during this experience, and I always say for anyone want a role in engineering or a job in engineering, go out and see if you could do interns or just find more about the career. Because what I thought engineering, civil engineering was very different looking at back now to what it is today. There's opportunities that I've been provided and working on large major infrastructure projects that I never thought were possible back then. At university, I also had when I applied for university, I actually applied for a BEng civil engineering degree, and the importance of people who sponsor or people who find out more about you. I had lectures that actually changed me to an MEng degree. So what I thought was going to be 3 quick years at university ended up being 5. And at the end, I attained an MEng civil engineering degree. So my career just thus far, I joined in 2014, as I already stated, as a graduate civil engineer. This gave me a really good, from doing placement years before, I'd already known the team at Mott MacDonald. I knew who I'd be working with. And I ended up moving into mainly major infrastructure projects. During my placement year, I started working at the Victoria Station upgrade, which is really interesting because I got to work with architects, mechanical, electrical, and plumbing, and it really gave you an insight into the holistic view of engineering, which is important, plus the detail work that you'll do if you want to be a civil engineer or whatever respective engineer you wish to be. As I've said, I worked majority of my career in major infrastructure projects, so apologies for the photos are a bit grainy, but I worked on the Doha Mashareb project in Qatar. That's the rapid rail transit. And this was a really interesting project for me. Why I chose it is because when I started this role, I started doing document control. I then, to gain some experience, then I worked on the enabling works of design, so looking at the anchors and the retaining structures for the station. And then I also then worked on the permanent, so in the structural case of actually the engineering of the station. So this is what it looks like today. This gave me a very good insight into all. So I was located in the UK, and the project is in Doha, Qatar. So that gave me a really good insight of working with a global team. We had different work days, we had different work hours, and also working with a client. So by this time, we're now in COVID, we all had teams. We were doing that prior, sending sketches to one another and having to be able to work fluidly. In my career then, from working in Qatar and on projects in Qatar, I then moved to a site support role. So one of the things in your career is where you're a designer, you want to get insight into the different respective parts of the industry. I worked on Northern Line extension, working on site support, going down onto the site, speaking to the team, understanding the challenges of the design that we may put forward, and understanding how actually things, constructability will be built and the methods. Now, this is really important to have insight of both the design and the practical work that you do, because you take that back into the design, and constructability is so important, and understanding the method at which your contractors to a building will use. In my career, at the moment, I then work on the Sizewell C nuclear plant as an embedded contractor. I don't know if many of you know, but I work on many of you know about Sizewell, but it's just been put forward its development consent order. So this is your planning permission to the European government, and we're just going through the examination period. And this is also telling the UK what you're proposing to do in that area, and also to all the councils and all the various stakeholders you will have regarding any measures you'll put in place. This role was really interesting to myself because it isn't just a civil engineering role. I look across marine, sea defences, electrical, chemical. So it's been as a project management role as well as an engineering role, give me a very good insight into the holistic view of engineering and the interface. More so, I've realised in my career is how important not only your technical ability is, but also your soft skills. And this is something that I found along the way is when at university, it can be very technical, and the importance of also giving presentations, speaking to someone, and being able to describe your work in both a technical manner, but a simplistic manner, catering to your audiences. At Mott MacDonald, I also am co-champion of the Advancing Race and Culture group, and I joined in 2016. This is a volunteer position that we took at Mott MacDonald, and that's helped us to work with the company, talking from a race perspective. I work with Sophie Leah, who's on the call today, and Alvin, who you'll speak to later, and also bringing different opportunities to Mott MacDonald and different initiatives, such as we work with recruitment, work experience, AFB transitions today, alongside internal responsibilities. And one of the things we're really proud of at the moment is Mott MacDonald have signed up a letter for the ethnicity race pay gap. And this is where we've talking about voluntary. Part of my role as an engineer has also been a governor of a primary school, looking at STEM in primary schools, and the importance of ensuring that STEM is really provided of what you can do in STEM, not just doing the calculations or what careers are possible, and really promoting this to young children for opportunities, and being a STEM ambassador. I've been really lucky in my career because I've got to see, as I stated before, a wide range of engineering, which has really helped me in my career. And as I said, respective of what you choose in engineering, it's good to always understand the opportunities, but also the pressures on other people in your team. In the picture, you'll see one of the cultural diversity events we did for World Cultural Day that was shared. So this slide here in closing was, in my career, I've faced both ups and downs and challenges. And it's one of the things that I believe is really true, is if all your dreams can come true if you have the courage to pursue them. I was awarded top 100 most influential women in engineering by the Financial Times in 2019, and in 2020 the Rising Star Award for women in rail. Starting my career years ago, I remember facing challenges of people going, are you really sure civil engineering is the route for you? Talking about the diversity in STEM, women in STEM. And I think if you have the courage to pursue your career and the resilience, your journey is your personal journey, and not to you can look at the journey and where you want to get to as role models, but having resilience and the courage to pursue it is so important, because you'll never understand where you can reach in your career without that courage. And that's what I want to speak to you about today. I'll hand over to Helena.
Thank you, Vanessa. I'm going to probably be as quick as possible, but if I do rush, I'm sorry. Let me just share my screen. You can ask questions, I think, in the question section. So let me know if I miss anything or skip over something. Let's share my screen. Just let me know if you can see my presentation. No, you can see the notes. Oh dear. Okay, we're here. Everyone can see? Okay, amazing. So hi, I'm Helena Jade Lee. I'm an aviation analyst at Mott MacDonald. I've been working at Mott MacDonald now for 18 months. I'm based in Croydon, where I was actually born and raised. I'm second generation British, so my grandparents on both sides are from the Caribbean, namely Jamaica and St. Vincent. And I was raised in a Christian home with 2 parents, my mum and dad, and 3 siblings. I was the second oldest, but as the oldest girl, that has a whole new pressure, I guess you could say. So that's just a bit of background on me. Next slide. Okay. So as a young girl, I was constantly asked the age-old question, which I'm sure most of you have heard: what do you want to be when you grow up? As young as 3-4 years old, I remember having this conversation. It's really strange that, and it ranged from singer, I guess, in the early ages, which is something I did do a lot of, not professionally though, pediatrician, cabin crew. I also wanted to be a mum, and one thing I never imagined was going to university. I don't know exactly why. Maybe it was because I didn't have anyone close to me in terms of my family that ever went, so that wasn't a consideration for me. Although I'm sure it's something my parents really were going to push me to do. So I decided, out of all of that, paediatricians sound like the most sensible one, and I decided to go to college in Croydon and study BTEC science. However, life changed, as it does. It gets real sometimes, and my mother, who had been diagnosed with lupus when I was just 2 years old, was hospitalized for quite a while, and she was actually really critically ill. At the same time, my brother had almost fatal bike accident, which was very traumatic for me because I was at the scene, and I had to really step up and support my family at the time. So I was in between 2 hospitals, supporting my younger sisters at home and just trying to be there for my mum and dad. Needless to say, college took a massive hit because of that. And as dedicated as I was to try and make up the time, I didn't have the support of my lecturers, and I had to drop out. So months went by and I decided I need to do something. So I started looking for a job, went to the job centre. That was how you did it at the time. And I actually got a job for maybe 2 weeks at TK Maxx before my mum put me in contact with somebody at Mott MacDonald. So at the time, my mum was working in aviation. Aviation is something a lot of my family, especially my mum's side, are really passionate about. I did never think I would be passionate about it. I had no idea it was even an option as a career. And so, yeah, she put me in contact with somebody from business development in 2008, and I got an interview and they put me forward for the role and I accepted. So I was a business development assistant and I worked there for some time, 2 years actually. And I ended up being a graphics assistant. So I worked my way up there and I loved that time. It was a really special time for me because it felt like a family. But they supported me in leaving when I decided that I discovered a passion for air traffic control. So I spent a lot of time popping over to the other office to see my mum in aviation and speaking to her colleagues, understanding what aviation is all about. And through my research, I found that airline and airport management was a degree that you could study at University of West London. So I applied there, and I didn't have any qualifications at college, as you can recall. So maybe you're thinking how? Well, I applied through clearing as a mature student, and they accepted after many emails, interviews, phone calls with course leaders. The head of hospitality wanted to have a face-to-face interview with me. So we came to an agreement that I would start on a foundation degree because they believed in me and I convinced them to do so. And if I got a really high grade average, then I could go into the full Bachelor of Arts with honours, which I did in the first year and was one of about 3 people that did that. So that was really amazing. And during my time at uni, which I will touch a bit more on later, I gained a lot of experience, volunteered, and what was really key and which you will see throughout is the networking part and building those relationships. So in 2014, because it was a 4-year course with a sandwich in between, I graduated with a first class honours in airline and airport management, something I never imagined I would do. And needless to say, it was a very, very proud moment for my family. This is just a few people that I could bring with me, my mum and dad, my 2 sisters and my grandmother. So, you know, arriving from Jamaica to the UK in the 50s, my grandmother dedicated herself so completely to her husband, her family, and also the church. And she was really integral, as were a lot of my family, for actually getting me through university. And I remember her picking me up after school. She was just really important. So she had to be there. It's actually the first person on my mother's side. I was the first person to graduate with any university degree, and only, I think, the second on my father's side, having my aunt just graduate maybe the year before me. So it was really exciting for us as a family. And hopefully the first of many. At university, I got involved with everything. I didn't feel like I had to be there. I really enjoyed it because I actually had the privilege and the honor of finding out what I wanted to do, which is not something everyone gets to experience. And so I was a student ambassador. I did a paid job at the university, doing open days and that sort of thing, working at Imperial College. These are all 0-hour jobs, everyone, just in case you're wondering how I managed everything. And which is really important to note here is I worked at check-in for a few months at Singapore Airlines before going to #1 lounges in Gatwick for my year out to get some experience in the industry. I also volunteered, and cue the most embarrassing picture, for the Metropolitan Police as a special constable. So that was really exciting. I got involved with that during just before. In fact, I attested with the Metropolitan Police at the time of the riots in London, as you would some of you would remember, and I spent some time, you know, supporting the Olympics during that time. So that was really exciting. But I really wanted to travel and see the world, but I didn't have a great load of money sitting there for me to do that. So I applied to be cabin crew while I was at university. I'd missed all the grad schemes. Unfortunately, I wasn't aware, as some aren't, that you need to apply early, but I did keep my ears to the ground in terms of job roles that could help me gain some experience. And so I worked for EasyJet as cabin crew straight out of university. Got to travel the world, well, most of Europe. And then I did lots of exciting things like chartered flights for kids going to Lapland and all sorts of fun landings on snowy runways. And then I applied for Virgin, which I did the year after I graduated. And that was a little bit more exciting because I got to see a bit more of the world and travel to places like New York, which I was fascinated with JFK. And you'll see the relevance of that later. So I got to do a lot of flights to New York. And then what was most exciting is that Singapore Airlines, one of the top airlines in the world, introduced a new grad scheme. Sorry, not grad scheme. Well, it was a graduate scheme, actually. It was an airport operations graduate scheme. They'd never done it before. So I piloted the grad scheme. In fact, I actually ended up basically writing it while I was there. But it was really a few intense interviews that I had, to go through, and some really odd tests, but I managed to get the job. And I got to travel a lot to Singapore for meetings, training, tours. And what was really important to me at this time was to get a lot of operational experience. Just because I believe that if you're ever in a position where you want to manage or impact on the industry, it's really good to understand what it is like from the inside. And so I've got some really unique experiences from that. I'm a massive Formula One fan, so I got to get involved with cargo. And here's just a charter for the Singapore Grand Prix. I love airplanes, so I really geeked out at that time. And then, as you can see, there's a trend here. I keep going back to companies that I've worked for before. I was back at Number One Lounges as a guest relations manager. One of my former colleagues reached out to me to find out if I'd be interested for a much lower role, but then having found out that I had so much experience at this time, she'd offered me the guest relations manager role. I then ended up project managing. This was a really integral time for the company. They doubled their lounges and they'd actually gone global. So my support for them was really to help them transition from a small customer-based business to a much more commercial and global business. And so my experience at Number One actually was what put me back at Mott MacDonald, because I had a lot of involvement with customer experience, performance management, transformation, and also governance. So back at Mott MacDonald, something that I'm not surprised with at this stage in my career, because you form relationships and you nurture those and you keep in contact with people. Not to mention my mum still worked at aviation at the time with aviation. So I got to getting to work on really exciting projects. Namely, I'm working with the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey on their JFK vision, which is huge for me, in customer experience and governance. And here's just a few to end of the airports that I've managed to have the opportunity to work on during my time here. So I'm considered an early careers professional. I'm not sure how many years experience in the industry you need to be considered an early careers professional, but I'm in that category, and I'm able to get a lot of insight into project management, which is another area that I'm really passionate about. So during my time here, I'm getting exposed to a lot of different aviation, I guess, skills and service lines that we have at Mott MacDonald. But it's a really great opportunity. And I think that's it. I will hand over to the next person. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Special thank you to Helena and Vanessa for really great presentations. So this was the time for a break. So we're just going to take a short break now and get back at 11:10.
Was this supposed to be time for questions?
Yeah.
I thought questions were at the end, but yeah, we can do that.
I think it's the 10:55. If anyone does have any questions, well, they might have gone on the break.
No, everyone's still here. So if anyone has questions, they can ask them. They get off mute and ask them. If not, they can just pop in the chat and they'll be able to answer.
I have a question for Vanessa.
Yeah.
Since you're in geotech, how easy would it be for you to, if you felt like doing a project in water or wastewater and then go back to geotech? Is it easy to move between departments in Mott MacDonald, or are you only able to move around different projects within geotech?
That's a very good question that you said that. So geotechnical engineering is quite interesting, and the fact that there's so many different disciplines that you need to understand.
Yeah.
So have I felt that just, being in the geotechnical department has probably placed me into one category? Not at all. I've worked on structures because that really interests me.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I use Doha as a good representative, going from the geotechnical design and moving into the permanent structural design. And the role that I'm doing at Sizewell C at the moment has lots of water I'm looking after. So surface drainage, potable water, understanding flood events and how that impacts the site. So because some people see it as it's one subject we have to stay in, but actually, because there's so many different aspects of engineering, I've been lucky where I've been able to have a broad variety of experience from that.
Okay, thank you.
Brilliant.
And if I could just jump in there as well, just to say that that's something that I'm going to cover in my section after the break, just after 11, of how you can kind of advance your career within Mott MacDonald, moving from different sectors and different specialisms. So it definitely is possible.
Okay, thank you.
I had a question as well, if I could ask.
Yeah, go on.
I've heard that Mott MacDonald's, I think it was an employee run business, or just employee owned business. I didn't really know what that meant. How exactly did the employees actually own the business?
So, and anybody can step in if I go off a bit. So an employee-run business is, so certain businesses are on the stock market, where the public can own shares, and the public are involved in, say, to some extent, the strategy of the business, because you want to keep your shareholders happy.
Yeah.
At Mott MacDonald, the employees at a certain grade, they are provided the opportunity to own shares, and it's not the public that owns shares into Mott MacDonald. So employee-owned business, because where people can receive dividends, or it's to the employees. So that's what changes. So there's only a few, I think there's us and Arab, who are majority still employee-owned businesses rather than on the stock market.
So the employees get dividends?
The employees can get it at a certain level, yeah.
Okay,
So once
yeah.
you receive a grade, they can invite you to own shares within the company,
Right.
which is, if you think about it, it's a really good incentive, because as employees, you then gain a great opportunity to, steer the business at AGMs, but also what you put into the business is what you get out.
Yeah.
So you want the business to be as profitable as possible, because you then become the same. So yeah.
Thank you.
That's okay. Hopefully I explained that.
Okay.
Any more questions for me or Helena?
I have a question for both Vanessa and Helena. So with like the current pandemic, what's been most challenging for your role at the moment?
Do you want to go first, Helena?
Yeah, sure. It's interesting that you should say that, because in aviation, as you can imagine, a lot has been impacted by the pandemic. So for me personally, it was quite a worrying time, because a lot of our projects had been put on, they'd been deferred. And with that, you also have to consider your forward order book. So the work that you've got in the future, and how this is going to pan out and impact the team. Because of course, as you can imagine, we've got, I think, around 40 people or so in aviation. And you're always thinking about the current projects, the projects that are coming up, and we had a good amount of people for the amount of projects we have, but when that went down, we did start to worry about how's the industry going to be impacted. However, saying that, it was a great opportunity for us to put together some I guess new service offerings in terms of COVID and how that impacts the industry. So there's quite a lot of work we've done around COVID, and it gave us an opportunity to I guess get our foot in the door in terms of producing that sort of material. So I think it has really impacted how we work. Obviously we're working from home, which a lot of us, we do tend to travel to our clients, which is something there's still a lot of clients wanting to do. But really, when we're just waiting for it to pick back up and doing what we can in the meantime to be ready for that, and to offer airports the kind of services that they're going to need, given all the challenges that they're facing.
Good. I think for myself, I had interesting. So when COVID had started, my partner was working at an international school in Denmark, and I have a 3-year-old son. So COVID for me was a lot to do with resilience, and working in a client office, and we needed to submit I was talking about the development consent order and looking for government funding. There was no stopping. So I say this to a lot of people, is that you, regardless of what may come your way, it's the resilience to try and get through is really important in life. So I won't show you, but I had a work desk next to me planning out my son's day and lessons while being on a meeting, also giving presentations and sorting out commercial aspects and project managing. And we had, so I think at the time I had a team of 100 people, and some of them were in India, and it would be funny because you're working from home, your kid is standing and sitting on your lap in some meetings as other people's are, and really it was a time of and for other people, at work I'm very much work person, and at home I'm mum, and it was the first time in my life, and I said to the team, they had intertwined in a way where, and our whole team, you had to get to know the people that you're working with in such a different way, as your kid is sitting on your lap doing their Kindle and exercises and you're presenting. And for me, during that period, I had my first experience of what being a single mum was like, as my partner was looking to come back. And I think that was I can laugh about it now, but at the time I was not laughing. But again, having that resilience to get through, where at the start of COVID going, I don't know how this is going to work, we're now being like, yeah, fine, lockdown, bring it on. And that's one of the opportunities we had, and it was so good because we were also really supported. So we had managers checking in on mental health, knowing your situation, just ensuring that you were okay. So that was COVID for me.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I have a question for Vanessa.
Yeah.
Just to like to know, as an engineer, do you have a lot of leeway as to what sort of projects you work on, or do you find them just allocated to you and then you just have to kind of fit your skills according to the project, or do you get a choice as to what you work on?
So I'm going to keep saying I've been really lucky in my career. Lucky, or it's also, I think it's the way the industry is. When I started my career, it was very allocated, but I expect it would be, because you're gaining insight into an industry where you may not be sure exactly what you want to do, or you may think you know what you want to do. And I always use a time of geotechnics where I had actually, when being offered a role in geotechnics, said, I don't know if geotechnics is for me. I'm much more a structural person. I'm not sure if this is the route I want to go down. And someone said, give it a year, give it a try, and I've never looked back. As you move later on into your career, you end up being able to take more of for me, an active step of the role that I chose for Sizewell B. I interviewed for it. So the opportunity came, and I had the opportunity to work on a few projects, and that was the one I wanted to go for. And as you gain experience and as you gain more of what you want to do, and whether you want to specialize, whether you want to be in project management, or whether you want to be very technical, whether you want a bit of both, you have more deciding factor of where you want to see yourself and what roles you want to do, because at Mott MacDonald there's lots of opportunity and lots of people. So if you don't particularly want that role, someone else should probably do. So yeah.
Thank you.
That's okay.
Do we have any other question?
I've got one more.
Okay.
Before you started your career, are there any skills you wish you developed like weeks before you started your role? to try and make certain things easier, or is the training given by Mott MacDonald before you start sufficient enough for you to be comfortable and progress as quickly as you want to, or complete your projects rather?
Helena?
Yeah. For me personally, at Mott MacDonald, when I joined, I had the benefit of having been at Mott MacDonald before, albeit maybe number of years before. However, it was still quite a learning curve for me. So the first week I spent doing a lot of online training, and I know that seems, you know, standard, but that was really important. It's a much different environment to what I was used to, being in a consultation environment. It's not like any other job I've had. It's quite structured, and I think it does provide you with that security, knowing that you've got this structure in place. Having just left, come to Mott MacDonald from a very small business, things are run a lot differently when you're at you know, this sort of global level. So I think what I'd done just before I joined is I was looking into doing Prince 2, so I started taking some short courses around that. That definitely would have helped if I hadn't have landed the role and had to, you know, start very quickly. I think my second day I was supposed to be doing training, and I was already working on the project. So I think I definitely could have had some experience beforehand, even if it was just to come in and understand how everything's run. I found myself in a meeting thinking, what is everyone talking about? Because there's so many people that you work with have different technical skills and abilities. And even today, I'm sure most of my colleagues would agree, we sometimes have no idea what people are doing on a day-to-day basis. But what's really, really good at Mott MacDonald is that you get to have, well, at the time we'd have these lunch and learn sessions. So once a week, we'd all meet up in a meeting room and have lunch that was provided, and someone would talk about what they do, their experience, what they're working on, and that really gives you a lot of experience and understanding of other roles and other maybe skills that you might be interested in. So I didn't really do much in terms of training. Everything was set up for me to be able to move forward. I had a buddy when I started, so they were there to support me, and I don't think I could have done anything differently. I'm sure there's obviously courses and different skills that you can gain that could support your transition into this kind of environment, but it was really set up quite nicely for us to just be able to start and get that support from the people around me.
Okay, thank you.
So my experience was a little bit different, but that's probably more personal. Was so at 11 I had an incident where I hit my head and I lost the ability to read. So I had to relearn at 11 how to read, how to write, how to, all those things all I'd gained was completely gone. So I had to go to educational regardless. And that's why one of the things I will say to you is have resilience. So at the point of going to educational psychologists, by the time I was in GCSEs, they said, don't bother take them. You will never pass. That you can't go to university, and don't involve with A-levels. Your brain pathways are just not working that way. I didn't really listen, as you can hear from the call today. And I said, I'm going for this. I'm doing whatever I need to, and I will be taking a career. However, what was really embarrassing was I actually failed my English exam to get into university. But I was like, it's okay. I went to English classes alongside, obviously had to do dissertations, but I was like, engineering is all about maths, and that's why I put soft skills are so important. One of the things I wish I did before going to work is practice your soft skills, practice your writing. There are quite a lot of reports in engineering, how you showcase your information, how you explain your technical, especially when giving them to a client. And I was really lucky at Mott MacDonald because I got support in place. So I gained special software, and actually now you probably couldn't even see that, hopefully, that journey has occurred and my writing's got extremely better. But presentation skills, when you are given a presentation, they always tell you practice in the mirror, practice how you sound, practice on some technical terms where, you know, in your writing, and even the basics which you may forget of, sentence structures. These are all really important things that if you get them and understand them, you end up flourishing more, because you can gain the technical if you want the technical, or the project management where and you will gain that along the way, but you're just in a better starting place. And for me, probably that's what I would have done, is gone back to the writing reports rather than trying to do it alongside my engineering and during my career. Any other questions? I think we've got time for one or two more.
I've got one, if that's all right.
Yeah.
I had a question. It's sort of it depends on both of your different roles and stuff. What's been the most complex like design constraint you've had to work on in your different fields so far? Oh, that goes to
so yeah, I think Vanessa will be able to answer this better, but what I can say in terms of my role, because I'm not working in design, but what I find has been the most challenging, complex sort of part of my role is working with a client from the US, because obviously there's differences in how we operate and how we do things, and I've had to adapt to that a lot. But also one thing that I want to point out is just understanding client relationships. So a lot of projects we work on will be working directly with the client, and a lot of the time there'll be sub-consultants. So we're working with multiple organizations to achieve the same goal. And so sometimes we can be a sub-consultant working with a main consultant who's offering a service to another airport. So it can get very complex in terms of the environment that we work in, and just trying to keep up with, okay, so on this project, we are direct client, and we have these sub-consultants who offer this part of the service, and where those they might be offering a service that we don't have in-house necessarily, or we don't have the resources for that. I also have to then try and understand what they're doing, and that's something that's completely out of my skill set, but it's something worth doing. And so it's quite easy just to sort of stick into your part of that role, but building those relationships and trying to bridge those gaps to achieve the goal. And that's ultimately what we're all trying to do, is deliver an excellent service to the client. So it's really been about building those relationships, and it sounds cliche, but it's so important. And yeah, that's been quite complex for me anyway.
I think one of the ones that I had was working on a project where being the designer at Mott MacDonald, so the client, like we do now, will have engineers. So what my role is now, checking our work. And I won't say what code it was, but one of the checkers came out with, there was a caveat in one part of this code saying how you do design. And I ended up having to, in the UK, I ended up having to check Australian code, I had to check American code, I ended up having to do feasibility analysis to prove that there'd be no change to design. And I remember at the time we were all sitting there going, if what the client had wanted and they were proven right, and it's not about right and wrong, but you know, technically it would have changed the British industry as we knew it. So I literally created a mini dissertation, I call it, I still have it to this day, of going through all the numbers and proving how our design was correct in the way we'd done it, and looking at all the case studies we've done, not just at Mott MacDonald, but around the industry, to prove and back analyze the data to ensure that we could do design the way we wanted it. And I remember sitting there going, I'm ready for engineering. After doing that, there was no problem that would come my way that I would not be able to tackle with a bit of hard work and dedication. But that, I think that one still stands as the one for me, where when you were doing it, going, I just code upon code, and it was codes I'd never seen or been taught at university. And that's the one thing that's important, where we always say is have your fundamentals, because once you have your fundamentals, it doesn't matter what code you use around the world, it doesn't matter what where you work in, your fundamentals are so important because they're the application of engineering. The code just help you to apply it. So yeah, that was definitely mine, and I still remember that person to this day.
Very much.
Is there any last questions we may have? Cool.
Yeah, I've got a question, if that's all right.
Yeah.
So at Mott MacDonald, is it like so putting your shoes, as in, so let's say you was a fresh graduate or a new employee or something at Mott MacDonald, do they give you quite a lot of like responsibility from the get-go, or is it more like he's new, just take your time with him and like let's not push him as much as he could be pushed, if you know what I mean?
So I've not personally been a grad at Mott MacDonald. However, saying that, I was a buddy for a grad who joined us last year. He started, he'd actually been with us before on a summer internship. So he'd had an idea of how things worked. He'd worked on, I think Heathrow at the time. And so when he joined us again, he joined a small project team with myself and my line manager working on the JFK project. And it was quite intense for him, if I can speak for him, in the sense that he'd just graduated. His experience with Mott MacDonald had been on a different project. So I think had gained a lot of confidence with that. But then coming back, it was a brand new sort of environment, a completely different service that we were offering. It was in customer experience and governance. And so I think what I would say is that what we tend to do is to understand your strengths. And it wasn't a matter of, we'll just give you some proofreading and then, you know, we'll see how you go. It was quite, I think a significant amount of responsibility, but what is really good to note is that the support network is there. So we have a lot of things in place to make sure that as you work and as you gain experience and confidence, you're able to have a, I guess you could say, a bit of a security network, a blanket, in that, you know, he would do his part of the work, and I would check it, and then my line manager would check it. So there is that sort of environment where you can feel that, okay, I can be a bit more confident about what I'm doing because I know that it's going to be checked and that I'm going to get the support I need to improve and to feel a bit more confident. So I was a bit concerned when I came back to Mott MacDonald that I would start really slow, but it wasn't slow for me. And I don't think I could say it was slow for any of the grads that joined us. But what I did notice with about 3 or 4 of the grads that joined us is that, you know, you put yourself forward for things, you go at your own pace, and people will give you more responsibility and they will entrust you with more. It's such an open environment that I don't think I could say, you know, that people weren't given opportunities, because you've got so much opportunity to show what you're made of and what you can offer. And if you haven't got that confidence, then you've got the environment in which to build that. So I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Vanessa.
No, I think I second that. So as I said, I'd done my placements and intern year here. So actually it's a really funny story. So on my first day, I was given a project and ready to go. But that's just because they knew me. So they knew my strengths, they knew my weaknesses, they knew exactly where I fit in, they knew where I needed. And that's sometimes a benefit of, you know, having interns or having that relationship with a company. Was on my first day, and I always laugh, I was literally, by the time I sat down, I was picked up, given to my project team meeting, I'd known a bit about the project and I was ready to go. However, also seeing new people come into the project, they will give you time, because if it's a new company, you need to learn the systems. And different companies, what I've learned, and even doing this to comment now, they speak in different ways, they do things in different ways, and it's so important they give you the time to learn that. But also, completely agree with what's been said before, it's the responsibility and the pace that you work at, and the people that you work with, your line managers, they will all understand that and be able to support you in a way that's key to you and relevant to you. And that's really important, because even though you are one Mott MacDonald, everybody's individual, and they notice that. And I think for our graduates as well, is that where you gain support is, and hopefully I do this, is where you have new graduates, part of your role is to have a buddy system and explain the role, the job, or what you're going to do in a way to work alongside you, to have a checker. So you'll have someone who checks your calculations, because you're not chartered as yet, but you should always have a checker anyway. And you'll have someone that, if it's doing it for the first time, to guide you along that process. Or if you're not doing the calculations, to even explain to you what the purpose of them are. So when you are ready to do them, you can see how they're being done.
Yeah.
So it's I think we're really supportive here.
Yeah. No,
I
that's
agree.
good. Thank you.
Okay.
I think now is the time to take a break. So everyone get yourself a drink and we'll be back in 10 minutes.
Hello everyone, I hope everyone's come back. So my name's Alvin Raymaud, and I'm here to give you a bit of a background about Mott MacDonald and kind of my involvement with the organisation as well. As this lovely cover slide shows, we're a global engineering management and development consultancy. So what does that mean? So, oh, that's not moving over, why not? There we go, that's better. So some key facts and figures about the organisation, and to go backwards through them because I like to be awkward. We've been going for a very long time. We have a large turnover. We have a large amount of staff, and we work in many different offices in many different countries. So as it says there, permanent offices in over 50 countries, but we actually work in over 135. And just to give you a bit of a graphical representation of that, these are all the different locations as a summary of where we are. In the UK itself, we've got about 6,000 staff in around 30 offices or so. And there was a question asked earlier, and it's something I will cover here. What does that actually mean to you? Well, we do have kind of lots of different areas and sectors that we work in, and a lot of different roles that are available for you and all staff in Mott MacDonald. So as well as the standard engineering roles, we also have transport modelers, hydraulic modelers, international development specialists, project managers, quantity surveyors, ecologists, hydrologists, everything else. And there's lots of scope and opportunity to develop yourself and your career within Mott MacDonald internally. So you could be in your own business unit and develop and maybe change role or change aspect, and maybe either specialize or maybe even widen the scope of what you're looking at, or move to a different business unit. And that was one of the questions earlier. So say if you're like me in the water unit, and maybe you know, you've heard the brilliant talks earlier, and actually you're interested in moving to the transportation unit, maybe you could move into the transport unit. Or there's a new development with wind power or solar power, and actually you want to get involved in that, you can move into energy. Maybe you're a massive football fan and your football team is developing a brand new stadium, and you want to be part of that actual development of that stadium and being part of it all. You could move into that unit. Or one of the recent projects our advisory division has been part of are these Nightingale hospitals for you know, the overflow for hospitals because of COVID. You know, converting a big giant conference center or a stadium into these makeshift hospitals to deal with people in case, you know, the numbers spike and you want to be involved in something like that. There's so much opportunity to develop yourself and your career within the company. And there's lots of information that we can have to go through all that, but unfortunately I've only got a few minutes, so I am going to keep it brief. But it was touched on earlier, and it is true here. And it's not just talk either. For me, as an example, I've with the start of the month, I've been with the company 6 years now, just starting my 7th year. And in 6 years I've been with the company, I've had 5 different roles in that time. And as well as the 5 roles that I've had, almost 1 a year, swapping over to something new, I also do some voluntary work as well within the organisation, similar to, as Nessa said, we're both on the Advancing Race and Culture Committee. And the Advanced Network is the employee engagement network that we have in Mott MacDonald. It helps support and raise awareness for all staff about our EDI initiatives that we have. And that stands for equality, diversity and inclusion. And we have 5 different branches of advance that we focus on: advancing disability, gender, LGBT+, race and culture, and a parents and carers network as well. And each of these advancing groups are open to all colleagues to join, whether you personally identify as that characteristic, or you're just an ally, or want to get more information, or want to be part of it all. Each of the groups is led by a committee or champions, and they all have an exec sponsor as well to help drive through improvement in the company. Here are some lovely pictures of some events and initiatives that we've held. As you can tell by the pictures, that no one is social distancing or wearing masks, that they're all from last year. Most of our events this year have all been, unfortunately, online, similar to this transitions event. But previously, as you can see there, a picture of when we did hold it in one of our offices. And there's lots of other things we do across the whole range of EDI to make things as inclusive as possible, including stuff with our clients as well, and wider industry events, because not just about making our company better and more inclusive, but what can we do to drive change in the industry and society wider as well. One thing I will pick up on there is the reverse mentoring scheme that was on the previous slide, but also on this one, and I apologise for the picture, although at least I'm a lot more clean shaven in that picture than I am today, but is to kind of throw a bit of a spotlight on ARC, Advancing Race and Culture. That's the committee that Nessa and I are both on, as well as other colleagues. And one of the initiatives we've helped drive forward within Mott MacDonald is the reverse mentoring scheme. It's something that Nessa's been on previously, and I have, and it's something we both wholeheartedly endorse and are enthusiastic about. And like any normal mentoring kind of partnership that you have a junior level member of staff and a more senior one. And the senior staff member will give you advice for your career, for your development, training, whatever it may be. Maybe even advise of opportunities, possibly, but maybe not. That's more of a kind of sponsorship role, but you know, they will help you towards chartership. They will help you be the best you at work. But the reverse mentoring scheme also has that 2-way mentoring. So actually, it's the opportunity for the junior member of staff to mentor the senior member of staff on issues about their life, whether it's race, disability, LGBT+, whatever it may be. It's about having that 2-way system. So quite generally, and this is a stereotype, but a lot of our senior management are male, middle class and white. Not all, but some, a high proportion of. And it's about explaining to them kind of the life experience we've gone through and opening their eyes and sharing that knowledge with them, helping them become better and understand kind of the issues at play that we've had to go through. We also work with external organisations such as the AFB here today, but also the BITC as well. That's Business in the Community, and we've joined their external cross-organisational mentoring circles as well. And that's people from lots of different organisations form a mentoring cohort, and you kind of share experiences amongst yourselves. And so you kind of get a wider knowledge of issues going on in the industry, but outside of the industry as well. And you can help support each other and develop things such as kind of managing upwards or delegating upwards, and your 5-year plan, your elevator pitch, all the standard mentoring things. But it's to support each other's. As a group, it's something I did a couple of years ago, and again, something we are wholeheartedly enthusiastic about. We also get the BITC to help us lead some webinars where they've held that with staff and with management to kind of explain race issues and kind of help us drive forward that conversation within the organisation. And as you can all probably imagine, this year has been quite busy for ARC with the whole Black Lives Matters event and initiatives and webinars and publications and presentations and everything we've done to help support that movement and support that discussion within the organisation. Hopefully you've seen, if you've done your research on Instagram, our recent Instagram stories for Black History Month, where we spotlighted and highlighted some of our Black talent within the organisation. And we in the process of doing lots of different surveys to staff and trying to keep the engagement going throughout, using the initiative that we've got and the momentum we've got to help drive improvement within the company. That's kind of my time up, unfortunately, but there's so much I could talk about and so much I could bore you with. I'm hoping that Mel is on the call now. Hopefully I've kind of whetted your appetite and piqued your interest in wanting to join us as an organisation. Mel is on next to kind of talk about the application process and give you some interview tips and things. I'm just waiting to hear if she's actually in the call.
I am, thank you, Alvin.
Marvellous. Are you happy to share the slides yourself, Mel?
I am, so give me 1 second. Just going to share my screen. Great. Good morning, everybody. I've just joined the call, so hopefully you've had a good morning so far. So my name's Melissa. I head up the early careers for UK and Ireland. So that basically means I cover all of the recruitment for graduates, interns, year-out students and apprentices as well. So pretty big job. We have a big intake here at Mott MacDonald. So we have a pretty slick operation. So I've got a little session here to go through a few hints and tips. Of course, some of you may or may not want to apply to us, but actually these tips can support you for any applications that you might want to make with any other organisation. So it won't be death by PowerPoint, but I do have a couple of slides to share. So let's get going. Okay, so one thing I just wanted to start off with is that if anybody is actually interested in applying, is to really kind of explain the type of roles that we recruit for and the backgrounds that you need to have to be able to join us on any of our schemes. You'll see on the slide there's a list of kind of roles there. So they are pretty much what they say on the tin. So a civil and structural engineering scheme is for students that have studied a civil or structural degree. Obviously it goes through the list, but you'll see at the bottom there's many individual roles that we also recruit onto our graduate scheme as well. So what that basically means is every year we have a bulk intake of the sort of standard, what we call the civil, electrical, mechanical, but we also have some very kind of niche, unusual roles that change from year to year. So that could be business analyst role, for example, which is something we've never recruited for before, and lots of other roles that many of you from different backgrounds in terms of degree backgrounds potentially could apply to. So it's not just engineering. Our schemes really cover a wide range of opportunities. So it's really key that we do talk about the individual roles, because some people think it's only engineering, and we look at this list and it's kind of very much kind of geared up towards your engineers. So any roles that you think you might be interested in, they're all live on the website and they're very specific for different parts of the business. So I just want to kind of share that we do have quite a big wide variety of roles available. Okay, guys, I'll stop that because I don't think many of you can hear it. So I'm going to go through some of the application tips. So most companies, if you're applying for a graduate scheme or an internship program, will have some kind of online application process. Now, the key thing that I always say is that obviously big organisations have more people applying. The smaller ones, not so many, but it's still the same. You need to make your application stand out. Now, it's very much appreciated that some of you will obviously apply for more than one position, but it really is key that you tailor your application to the business that you're applying to. Now, it sounds really, really basic, but spelling mistakes, grammar, punctuation is a real key thing. And we are reviewing applications en masse. We have in excess of 10,000 applications a year, which puts people off in some ways because they think they can't make their application stand out. You absolutely can. The ones that put their heart and soul into their application and really show their passion, really show why they want to work for us, those people stand out, and they're the people that get noticed. So once you're doing your application, whether it's for us or anybody else, you really do need to make sure that you're doing your research and planning and preparing and taking your time on the application and making sure that you can demonstrate why we would want to recruit you. So it's pretty simple, and it really is a recruiter's bugbear to look at an application with a wrong company's name in it, for example, and that's a big no-no for us. I think also as well, only apply to roles that you're interested in, because it really will show when you're putting your application forward that actually, I can see that they're perhaps not, this is not their first choice, and just really put your heart and soul into the schemes that you want to apply for. One thing I wanted to mention here on this slide is just about what we offer as a graduate training scheme. So these are for graduates who are joining on a permanent contract. We have a training and development scheme that essentially has two components to it. The first is the professional part. So most of our graduates that we recruit, well, once they join us, they will work towards a professional qualification post-graduation. Generally speaking, it's a professional qualification in the sector and industry that you're going to be working in. So I'll give you an example. For a civil engineer, we would recruit a graduate civil engineer and they would go on to work towards chartership with the ICE. So what our scheme does is it supports you to become chartered. You'll be given a chartered mentor who will sign off your objectives online and support you through that learning journey to become chartered, which is essentially the next step in your career once you've graduated. So there's that side. The other side is what we call the softer skills. So it's a 3-year, this is a set program, and this is developing key strengths that we've identified that you need to be successful in the business. So it's a variety of online classes, face-to-face sessions, classroom-based learning. So it's a kind of whole suite of different things, and that is that set 3-year program. So I'll give you an example. It's developing things like communication skills, presentation skills, so all things that you need to kind of be successful in our business. I think I might have heard Alvin mention a little bit earlier when I just came on to the call about sports and socials and things that we do. Obviously not too much at the moment with everybody working from home. As you can see, I'm working from home myself. But in a normal situation, we do have a great sports and social, which is subsidised. So every office has a subsidy provided for them, and we have lots of different things available. And if we don't have it, then pop your hand up and make it happen. So me personally, we go bowling as a group, which is great. But there's loads of different random things that everybody can be involved in. And there's things also that, things like theatre tickets, cinema tickets that are all discounted price. So that's a great kind of incentive to have as a local office. And mention about the access to learning and development. I did touch on obviously the training program, but we do have a dedicated learning and development team that look after the grads in the UK and Ireland. They're a team that are based in our head office in Croydon, and we have a whole suite of training available essentially. So anything that you feel you might need your skills brushing up on or you need support with, there's generally speaking a course or someone there to support you to develop that skill. So it's a great development program that we offer here. So I've jumped the gun a little bit and spoken about our graduate schemes here, but one thing I want to touch on this slide is about professional chartership. Now, if any of you are engineers on the call, we generally advise that chartership takes anywhere between 4 to 6 years. Now, you're probably thinking, oh, wow, I've just finished university. That's a very long time. But becoming chartered is something that you want to kind of aspire to a few years down the line. We've had somebody in the UK, I believe, has chartered within 3.5 years, which is unbelievable, which is great. But a more realistic view is probably more like 5 to 6 years. So it's really just explaining that actually the training goes beyond that 3-year program of the softer side. Now, I did have another video here that I'm going to skip again because I think we're going to have the same problems. So anyone that wants to apply, we have a really simple process. Now, one thing I just wanted to mention that other organisations will be similar. So we've adapted because of the COVID-19 situation. So where we have the interview with the future team at step 3, that will be a virtual interview. So it will be delivered in the same format, but just virtually. So our interviews are normally face-to-face in the office that you're going to be being considered for, and they're a strength-based interview. So with Mott MacDonald, we don't do assessment centres. Most organisations will run assessment centres, but due to COVID-19, they will be delivered virtually, I imagine. But with us, it's a simple 4-step process. You do the online strength-based assessment. So that basically means we are assessing that you are meeting a minimum standard to be able to be successful to progress to the next part of the process. So it's a strength-based assessment that's around about 25 minutes, and it's asking you, what would you do in this scenario? So there's no preparation. It really is turn up, answer the questions as honestly as you possibly can, and answer how you think you would react in these scenarios. Step 2, once you've hopefully passed and progressed, then you'll be sent the application form. Application form is obviously detailing, where I mentioned in the previous slide, is all about why you want to work for us, what your motivations are, why we want to recruit you. And this is your time to shine. This is your time to really tell us why we want to interview you and why we want you to join us as a graduate. So it's a great opportunity to make sure that we do progress you. Then if you are selected by the recruitment team, you are offered an interview. So that'd be the virtual interview. And the 4th step is an offer, which is great. If you get to that point, that's great. It's a permanent offer for our training scheme. You don't have to reapply for your job after 3 years. Some organisations do have a slightly different process where you would have to reapply, but it's a straightforward offer, permanent, onto our training scheme. Now, one thing I thought I'd mention in my short presentation is a little bit about video interview preparation, because this seems to be the way that we're progressing for probably the rest of this year and probably most of next year, I guess. Is video preparation for an interview online is very much the same as if you're going to be going face to face. Just pretend you're in the interview with the assessor. So it's all about making sure that you are dressed ready, your camera is in the right place, you've done your preparation, you've got your list of questions ready to ask at the end of the interview, and it's making sure that you fully prepare as if you would be going on a face-to-face interview. Now, our interviews are strength-based. Now, I was asked to cover a little about strength-based. A lot of organisations are doing the competency-based, but we are running a strength-based. So I thought it'd be good to share what a strength-based interview is, because in the early careers space, more and more organisations are actually moving towards a strength-based solution. A strength-based solution is essentially looking at what you like doing. What are you good at? What excites you in your day-to-day life? Now, we don't need you to have experience to be able to demonstrate what your strengths are. We will be asking you, what would you do in a scenario? So very similar to the assessment that we ask you to do online at the very beginning of the process. It's a very easy, natural way to answer questions. There's absolutely no preparation to do for a strength-based interview. It's all about being completely honest and not answering a question in the way that you think the assessor wants you to answer it in. Now, as a graduate being interviewed, you don't know what strengths we are looking for different streams and different areas of the business. So it really is being completely honest and answering, well, in this scenario, I think I actually generally would do X, Y, or Z. And it's really, really being honest. And it's a natural way. There's no preparation. It will feel a very different to a competency-based, because a competency-based environment is where you're asked to give an example of a time where you've done something. So essentially, it's providing evidence. We move to a strength-based solution because it offers a much more fair and inclusive process for students that haven't been given that opportunity to have work experience in their university studies. Not everybody has that opportunity to have work-based experience that's related to their degree. So a strength-based solution really is just about what you like naturally doing and what you're good at. And we ask questions to basically find out what you're good at and what you like doing. Of course, if you can imagine things you like doing, you want to do more often, and you'll try hard and you'll be better at it. So we want to recruit people that have got certain strengths in certain areas because they'll be better at it because they like doing it. It's pretty simple, really, when you kind of look at the basics. So no preparation, which is great. Obviously, the preparation I would recommend that you do is you obviously do some research on the organisation that you're having an interview with, because, of course, you do need to understand about their values, their business areas they operate in, the clients that they have. You know, these are all key things that you would, of course, be expected to have some knowledge on. Okay, that pretty much brings me to the end. I should have mentioned at the beginning, please put your hand up and put anything on the chat if you do have any questions, but please fire away if you've got any questions.
First of all, I want to say thank you for a beautiful presentation.
Thank you.
Yeah, my name is Eseret. How you just see SET on my profile just now, but my name is Eseret. Yeah, can you hear me?
I can.
All right. So my question is, what are you doing in terms of the energy transition?
So in what sense? Can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
Right, because I'm an MSc student of oil and gas engineering at Robert Gordon's University, and my project will be on carbon capture, utilization, and storage.
Okay.
And also incorporating some hydrogen production for hydrogen fuel. So I just want to find out what your company is doing in that regard.
Well, so my role here is I actually manage the recruitment. So that's kind of a little bit getting down into the nitty gritty. But what I'm going to be doing is any questions that I can't answer or any of the other Mott MacDonald staff online can't answer, I will take it away and I'll come back to you and find out. That's something that I can't answer.
Okay, fair enough.
So I will put my email address. My email address will be provided. So please feel free to drop me a line and I will absolutely find out a very specific answer to that question.
Yeah, so what kind of questions would you be able to answer?
So anything about the schemes that we have, the process, the numbers, what we look for. So anything to do with the recruitment piece onto our journey, basically. Okay,
so what are the numbers in terms of remuneration for graduates? Because I graduated with a first degree in electrical electronics engineering in Nigeria. But I came here to study oil and gas engineering because I'm an energy enthusiast. Make sure we have sustainable energy and we're working efficiently and effectively with our energy resources, and also to make sure we have cleaner energy just to make sure our environment is safe. So my question would be, what's your remuneration for graduate level students or graduate entry positions?
So we have a sliding scale. The salary is higher if you're coming into London, and it's slightly less if you're in Scotland. And there's a slight difference on whether you have a bachelor's degree or a master's degree. So the highest salary would be around about 29,500 for London master's graduates. And then if you're looking at, if we go to the other end of the scale, we're looking at bachelor's in Scotland, you'd be looking about 26,500.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I love Scotland, so I'd like to stay. I don't mind the 26. It's okay. I'm not all about money. I'm
Yeah.
all about making sure I have an impact and delivering my services to the best of my ability to you guys.
Right.
So yeah, I
One
love
thing I
that.
will say is when our graduates join us, they are, as long as they pass probation, which is 6 months, graduate salaries are reviewed biannually, which basically means your salary will be reviewed every 6 months for the first 3 years. So after probation, every 6 months, the team looks at our graduate salaries and they are reviewed. There are no set scales because that's where graduates start to, their salaries start to change. The great performers will essentially start getting more higher salary reviews than perhaps the other people that are not performing as well.
Okay. So no worries. My take would be to make sure I contribute my best efforts to your company and to make sure that we're doing our business in the best way possible to the highest of the standards of the state of the art of the business and technology.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for your question. Any other questions?
Yes, hi, Melissa, it's Allegra. Thank you very much for a very informative presentation. We do have some questions in the chat. The first one is, how long will the strength-based interview typically last?
So with us, we're looking at around about 2 hours. So that's from start to finish. So that also covers an element of technical ability as well. So it depends on what stream the interview is being for. There is different technical questions within the strength-based format, but it's around about 2 hours. 2 hours is certainly what we allocate per interview.
Great. Also, are portfolios useful for interviews or purely CV-based knowledge?
Could you just repeat that? I didn't quite hear that.
Yeah, a question from Andrea Withers. So are portfolios useful for interviews or are they purely CV-based knowledge?
No, so we don't use CVs at all. Again, we've made the decision two recruitment cycles ago that we actually only accept application forms. Now, the rationale behind that is because we are offering a much more fair and inclusive process. So basically, everybody's on the same level playing field. There's a lot of unconscious bias that comes into play when people see CVs because they might say they like the look of the format of that one, or they might not like the look of that one. So it's only we look at applications, we're only looking at the questions that we've answered. So everybody has that fair chance of being considered and being offered a position. So the interviews will be the same format for everybody. So as long as they're obviously being interviewed for the same position, they would be expected to have the same interview.
Okay. I would also like to say, if someone wants to ask a question, just get off mute and you can do that.
Yeah, I'd ask a question if that's all right.
Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I was just going to ask a question, but just linking back to what the other previous guy said, to answer his question, I do know that Mott MacDonald has, and Condor as well, they reduced carbon emissions by 45%. I read this 3 days ago. It's funny that he just asked that as well. But my question for you was, how did you get started in, Mott MacDonald?
So I work within the recruitment team, as I mentioned, and I've come from a recruitment background, and I have been here for over 10 years now. I've recruited graduates when I first started 10 years ago, and they are now quite senior members of staff. Now, it sounds really, really cheesy that actually people spend their entire career here. It's actually true. Now, we have so many different sectors that obviously I saw in the presentation before you were sort of given a light to, and people are not pigeonholed into one area. And once you join and realize what such a great organization we are, that people do evolve and change and move and go into different sectors and areas, and actually you can have a very fulfilled career just working at Mott MacDonald. Now, again, I know that sounds incredibly cheesy, but there's so many people that have been here for years and years. And I'm not an engineer, so I can't really talk about how I got into working for Mott MacDonald, because obviously I'm working from a recruitment function. but I did come from a recruitment background, therefore it was a natural kind of progression to come into managing an early careers piece.
I've got a question as well, if that's all right.
Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
I can.
So at the graduate level, in terms of the progression from the assessment online to then having the video-based interview, what strengths and weaknesses do you look for, not weaknesses, sorry, what do you look for in candidates at that stage once they've got through, let's say, the initial assessment, and then down to now, you said the strength-based interview just before?
It's a very difficult answer to answer, because we look for a variety of different strengths, and this sounds like a funny thing to say. They're not strengths that we particularly share, because when you because we look for different strengths in different streams, and it's about your natural strength. So if we turn around and said, we want you to be X, now that is going to get you thinking, okay, well, they're going to be looking for X strength, I need to be answering in a certain way. We really do need to have people answering in their most natural, honest way. Now, we want a diverse pool of people to apply. We want a diverse people of people to work for us. It makes a great workplace. It makes a more successful business. The more diverse your workforce are, the more successful you'll be. So I can't answer that, because it's not a closely guarded secret or anything like that. It's just different for different streams, and it will change as the year goes on as well. It's just making sure that you're a fit for us, but also we're a fit for you. It's a two-way thing, an interview process, that actually we want to make sure that you finish that interview and think, I really want to work for them. Not, I'm not really sure. You know, we want you to have a job with us if you're offered and you think this is a great fit. They love me and I love them, and I could see my career progressing from here. So it's very much a two-way thing, and you will find this as your careers go along. You'll go for interviews and you'll think, this is not me. I can't see myself working in an organisation like that. I think another piece of advice is to really appreciate that it is a two-way thing, and you need to make sure it's right for you as well.
All right, thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you for that question, because it's brought another question to my mind. I have interests in various things, and one of them is empathetic listening. So I know that as a human being, we need to have psychological air from time to time to air out our views and our worries sometimes.
Oh, you've just gone on mute.
Oh, I'm very sorry for that. Pardon me. So I said, my question would be, do you have psychologists that could help us with empathetic listening? Because I have a strength in empathetic listening. My weakness is over-explaining. So, yeah, but I can empathetically listen to you guys if you have anything. Don't mind my my hoodie and stuff and my glasses. I was out cycling, which is one of my interests. So to balance my life, because I've been really stressed out this past month, working on carbon capture, utilization and storage, and also trying to incorporate hydrogen fuel into what we're doing. But let's stick to what I said. Yeah, you have a psychologist who could help, you know, whenever we have stress situations that we have to deal with, because I know the work environment is intense. And from time to time, we'll need that psychological air just to air our views and our worries sometimes, yeah? So that's my question.
Okay, so no, we don't have psychologists work for us, but we do have is a support line. It's a line that you can ask anything. So if you're feeling stressed about work and you might need support for your mental health, we have a really, really great support network. It's something that I know is used a lot, and it can be for anything at all. It's a 24-hour helpline that is manned by an external organisation. It's not tracked. You know, your feedback and your support that you might receive doesn't go back to your line manager or anything like that. So if you do need support and help, there is that external line that is available. So it's not a psychologist, no, but it certainly is a support that can be used by all members of staff.
Thank you very much. I appreciate
in
that.
there
I
as
am
well.
actually considering.
Internally,
I'm
we
actually
also have
considering.
lots of support as well.
Okay.
We've trained mental health champions, and in one
Awesome.
business unit, mental
Awesome.
health first aiders. So if anyone
Awesome.
is struggling, if they don't feel comfortable going to the line manager or support within their team, there's these people that have been trained by Mental Health England to be able to offer you help and kind of signpost help and advice to you. And then, as Melissa said, we've got our external confidential employee assistance program to help you as well. And they help regardless anything, as Melissa kind of said. So whether it's financial issues, mental health issues, physical issues, anything, they're external experts you can talk to, completely confidential, to get that help and advice from them as well.
All right. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I love McDonald's already.
I've noticed,
So
Melissa, there's a lot of questions in the chat for you. We probably need to start blitzing through them.
I'm so sorry, I can't
find
see the
what's
chat. So
latest.
somebody's going to
I
have
don't
to
know if you
read
can
them
see
to
them.
me. Alvin, can you read them to me? Because I can't actually see the chat.
I can do that for you. So there's a question from Richard Paul saying it was previously mentioned that the interview is strength-based. So would there be any technical engineering question, or is it very broad?
Yes, there is. There's around about 3 questions, and they will change depending on the team that you're going to be interviewed with. Your technical ability is very important, as well as the strength base, but the interview is dominated around the strengths with a very small piece of the technical ability. Of course, you do need to have a minimum standard of a technical ability to be able to join any of our streams. So yes, but again, it's nothing to prepare for. It's actually asking about, things that you may have learned at university and understanding your in-depth knowledge that you may have around certain technical areas.
Great, thank you. There's also another question from Joshua Raymond. He's asking if Mott MacDonald screened candidate based on their achieved or predicted university grade, or if it was solely based on their performance in interview.
Well, it's good news. It's based on solely performance at your interview. Last year, we have made the decision to decide that we are not asking for your grades. So we believe that students who have, for example, a 2-2 are not necessarily not going to be right for our scheme compared to somebody who had a first, for example. So we are actually considering everybody who is predicted to pass their degree, essentially, and your offer will be based at the next stage, which is an interview. So the grade doesn't actually get taken into consideration.
Great. Abdi Ismail.
I would like to.
Sorry.
Hello, Melissa. I would like to just ask a question in regards to the presentation you gave. My question is this: in regards to the graduate scheme, based since the schemes are in different locations or in different offices across different locations, is an applicant able to select his or her most preferred location? For example, let's say the electrical engineering scheme, the offices in Croydon and other places. So, and is the applicant able to select his or her most preferred location? And also, in regards to the most of the graduate scheme, it says in the requirements that an applicant should have at least a minimum or less than 12 months work experience. So what happens to postgraduates who have more than 12 months work experience? Is that going to be a problem in regards to the application process or not?
Okay, so let me answer your first question. So when you go through the application process, our streams will have locations that you can actually select, because some people are more flexible than others, and that's absolutely fine. So as long as we know the areas that you want to be considered for, and they'll actually be quite specific. So you mentioned the electrical scheme. So it will actually give you the opportunity to apply for different sectors in different locations. Now, there's a wrong perception that students believe that we recruit every sector, every discipline and every office. Of course, that's not the case. Every office is different. They're smaller, bigger, different teams, and some don't recruit graduates at all. So it's very, we're quite honest at the front of the process that you are given the information that you can see where we have roles available. So, for example, the electrical scheme might say that we have an electrical role available in the highways team in Edinburgh. It might say we have a role available in the building services team in Southampton. And you can very clearly select the roles that you feel that you're interested in and obviously able to work in. So yeah, that's the answer to the first question. Second question, just remind me what the second question was.
So the second question was in regards to the work experience requirement. So
yes. Yep. So
it says that you should have less than 12 months experience, which sometimes is not the case for most postgraduate.
So we're looking at 12 months experience post-graduation. And if you have that, then we won't consider students applying to our graduate scheme. They need to apply for roles that they're going to have that year's experience in, essentially, through the Experienced Hire website. So all of our roles are actually advertised and updated daily on our website. So students that have a little bit more experience than 12 months are asked to apply for a more experienced position. They still get the opportunity to join the graduate scheme, in the sense that you get the opportunity to be part of the training, the mentorship program, everything else that comes with that. But it just means you wouldn't be a new graduate going onto the program that starts the summer after. Experienced hire roles tend to be, they're available to start now or whenever they're being advertised.
Just to clarify that, so for the more experienced role, does it mean that if a postgraduate was applying for that, he or she would need to have at least more than 12 months work experience?
Correct.
Okay.
Melissa, there are a number of questions here regarding sponsoring visas for graduates. Does McDonald's sponsor visas?
I'll round up all the questions. I'm sorry I can't see the chat, but I'll guess what the questions are. So with our programs, yes, we absolutely do consider sponsoring students. That's absolutely fine. Laws are changing with Brexit. So my advice that I'm going to say now is what the law is at the moment. Now, we pretty much know what things are going to change, but until they do definitely change, my advice is based on the here and now. Now, you need to have a valid Tier 4 visa, and it has to be valid for when the program starts. The reason for that is that we then switch students' visas onto a Tier 2. Now, if you don't have a Tier 4 visa, we have to do what you call a resident labour market test. And that is for us to evidence that we can't fill the job with a UK national. We can't provide that evidence. We just wouldn't fulfill that criteria. So you need to have a Tier 4, which then the immigration office allow us to do a switch to a Tier 2. And that then gives students, all our graduates, it gives us 5 years worth of work rights in the UK. That is going to change. Like I said, we don't know what it's going to change to at this stage, because, there's lots of, talk in the air of things changing, but that's where we are at the moment. You need to have a valid Tier 4. Okay. Hopefully that summarises all these questions.
Yeah, so I think we do have 2 or 3 remaining questions. So the first one is, with an application, how do you initially screen the applicants? For example, do you initially look for work experience, degree prediction, curricular activities, etc., or do you just look at the applicant as a whole?
We look at the applicants as a whole, and when we come to reviewing the applications, we really spend a lot of time reviewing every question that we've asked. Now, remember, we are asking everybody the same questions, so we don't ask for anything that's not relevant. And students that don't have any extracurricular or sorry, any relevant work experience, they're not penalised for that, because we really have taken on board and appreciate that not everybody's had that opportunity. Now, for me, I manage the UK and Ireland team, and the key thing is about putting your passion and your heart and soul into that application to demonstrate that you really want to work for Mott MacDonald, not I've just put an application in and, you know, I'm just looking for a grad scheme. It's really, I really want to work for you, and this is what I can bring to the table. And that passion really does show. I mean, we review hundreds of applications a day. And when you read somebody's application and think, oh, wow, they're so passionate. They're so, that they put so much time into this, and they really know about us, and they're the sort of people we want. So we look at the whole application. Every question that you've answered is reviewed, and that's how we make a shortlist.
Okay.
We've had a couple of, I was going to say we've had two questions the same, I think, which might be good to answer. Is does a MEng make you more competitive than someone with BEng for graduate entry positions? And then another very similar question about the same question, but when applying for year in industry, are the MEng applications advantage compared to BEng?
They are, yes. As an employer, we very much will favour master's students. Now, the reason for that is because most of our programmes, the training scheme is for you to become chartered. Now, if you have a master's programme, a master's degree, you can work towards chartership from the get-go. If you don't, you need to show evidence. You need to evidence that you've got the equivalent of work experience. Now, it is a very much longer process. You're looking at probably over 10 years to become chartered if you don't have a master's degree. Now, there is the opportunity for us to sponsor students if they come in to the programme with a bachelor's, so a BEng or BSc, but that's 2 years down the line. You need to have that 2-year minimum service before that can be considered. So unfortunately, yes, we do favour master's students over bachelors. We do still take bachelors. It's a definite a proportion of our programme, but it's a smaller proportion.
Okay. I think the last one that we have here is, would the interview process for internship be the same for graduate schemes, especially when you haven't developed the technical knowledge based on the former case?
Yes, so the interview process is exactly the same, but there's not going to be as much emphasis on that technical ability, because of course a student in, you know, their second year is not going to have the technical ability you would anticipate somebody who's just graduating. So yes, there is a small technical part as well, but it wouldn't be as heavily weighted in terms of the overall scoring.
Great. I think the last question that we have from Jenna is, in terms of the application form, would you rather see a concise and straight to the point answer, or a longer, more elaborate answer is more preferred?
On the application form, we have a number word count guide, and it will give you a guide on what we kind of suggest to put together. Now, it's going to be the latter. It's going to be to elaborate more and to try and explain. As I say, it's about that piece of showing that you can shine above everybody else. You can't really do that if you're going to have kind of short, sweet answers, if that makes sense.
Great. Yeah, I think that's all the questions that we have at the moment. Is there any possibility to get the link to the current application openings, or is that just on the website?
Yes, I'll be able to share that. As I say, I can't see the chat, but I will send it to Sophie to share. Some of our schemes have closed, but you'll be able to see quite clearly what is available still and what will be likely to be reopening. Due to the coronavirus, sort of, you know, the pandemic that's going on, we've changed our process slightly in the sense that normally we would have a closing date quite a lot later on down the line. But due to just having to change and adapt things, we've got a closing date a little bit earlier this year. So we've actually closed some of our schemes already. But that doesn't mean that we wouldn't reopen them again as things change and more roles are released later on in the year.
That's great. I think that have answered everyone's question. Thank you very much, Vanessa, for a very informative presentation. I think our prospective students or people who have already graduated will be applying soon to some of your available positions.
Well, I'm on LinkedIn. Please feel free to link in. And happy to answer any further questions outside of this session. If Sophie wants to provide my email address, please feel free to contact.
Great. I think now I will just, we are close to the closing of this morning session. I will just share my screen and show you what to expect in the afternoon session. So that will be handled by my colleague Chi. She's on the call now. I will just share my screen and show you the pairings that we have for the interview session and the Pictionary exercise as well. Yes, so the afternoon session 1 will start at 1:20. So these are the pairings that we have. And this is for the second session that will start at 2:10. On the right side, you can see the student, and the 2 other names are the assessors. And these are the pairings then for the group exercise. So we're going to have then a break, and we'll come back at 1:20.